Moving to file item 219. That's AB 858. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 858 by Assemblymember Wood and others, enacting the Medi-Cal.
We're going to pass temporarily on 218. Moving to 219. That's, pardon me. Excuse me, members. Mr. Wood is there. My error. 219, AB 858. Mr. Wood, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 858 allows federally qualified health centers and rural health clinics to hire marriage and family therapists and have their services reimbursed, just like psychologists and social workers can now do. MFTs are recognized by the state as Medi-Cal providers, but are not recognized as such in clinics for the purpose of billing. AB 858 also addresses the issue of not reimbursing for a mental health visit on the same day as a medical visit. So, for example, you could go to a clinic and have a medical visit and a dental visit. However, if you went to a clinic and asked for a medical visit and you needed a mental health visit, that would not be allowed. 32 other states currently allow for the same billing that we are asking for. Up to 26% of primary care patients have some sort of mental health disorder. This is particularly an issue for adults with chronic conditions such as diabetes and heart disease. It's time for us to adopt policies that encourage accessing needed services and eliminate unnecessary barriers to receiving integrated care. AB 858 has received bipartisan support in the Health Committee, and I respectfully ask for your support and your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 67. No, 0. Measure passes. File item 220. That's AB 866. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 866 by Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, enacting to economic development.
Mr. Garcia.
Mr. Speaker and members, AB 866 makes two modest improvements to the existing public process for adopting regulations that impact our small businesses. The first is authorizing the Small Business Advocate to assist the state rulemaking agencies in identifying stakeholder groups that may be affected by a regulation. The second is requiring rulemaking agencies to notify the Small Business Advocate when they have developed a small business compliance guide. With that, there is no known opposition. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 68. No, 0. Measure passes. File item 221, AB 918. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 918 by Assemblymember Mark Stone, enacting to developmental services.
Mr. Stone, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speakers. Members, AB 918 is a bill that will protect our most vulnerable people in California as we move folks from the developmental centers out into community-based care. In the state-run developmental centers, there is reporting when seclusion and restraints are used, either physical restraints or chemical restraints. In the private facilities that they're moving to, there is no such reporting. AB 918 closes that gap, requires that reporting so that we can meet the legislature's longstanding interest in reducing the use of restraints and seclusion with our frail elders and members with disabilities, and I respectfully request your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 71, no, 0. Measure passes. File item 222, AB 920. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 920 by Assemblymember Gibson, enacting to parole.
Mr. Gibson, you may open.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. AB 920 will provide victims equal access to information at parole hearing. Prior to each parole hearing, the parole board, the district attorney, and the inmate's attorney all are provided a packet of information regarding the inmate's incarceration. This bill received unanimous support in both the Assembly's Public Safety and Appropriation. Is sponsored by the Crimes Victims United. I ask for the aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 72, no 0. Measure passes. File item 223. That's AB 932. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 932 by Assemblymember Daley and others enact relating to vehicles.
Mr. Daley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill establishes the Sports Franchise License Plate Program. This new program allows California professional sports franchises to make their logos available for use on specialty license plates. I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Thurmond, who was a co-author of this. Fees collected by the program would help fund grants supporting local parks. 26 states in our country offer specialized license plates that display logos of their professional sports teams. California is home to a total of 18 professional sports teams in 6 different leagues, with millions of fans around the state. So the potential for significant revenues from this program is very promising. Thank you for your consideration. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Thurmond, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members. I'd like to thank my co-author for bringing this forward. I'd simply say 2 things. I would add to what my distinguished colleague has said, and I wish to associate myself with his distinguished remarks. 50% of the kids in my district have obesity. Many young people throughout the state experience obesity, and there aren't funds to provide programs to support them. This is a very easy way for Californians to show their support for children and families, for our students, to use parks and recreation. You heard all the teams that are here in California, including our Warriors. Go Warriors. Let's get those license plates, and let's do it for the kids and families.
Mr. Jones, you are
Thank you,
recognized.
Mr. Speaker and members. And I just want to rise in support of AB 932. And thanks to the Anaheim Ducks, hockey is now returning to San Diego. So I do have a question for the author, please.
Without objection.
If this bill passes and signed by the governor, would I be able to get a San Diego Gulls license plate, or would I have to get an Anaheim Ducks license plate?
Easy question. Anaheim Ducks. Professional teams only.
On my own time, Mr. Speaker, I did rise in support of the bill, but now that Mr. Daley has taken it upon himself to disparage the new semi-pro team in San Diego, I have to reconsider my vote.
Now that we are debating this item, Mr. Daley, would you like to close?
I didn't want to go down this path. I promised Ms. Garcia 60 seconds, so I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. With that, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 71, no 0. Measure passes. Moving to file item 225, that's AB 1016. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1016 by Assemblymember Santiago enact relating to public post-secondary education.
Mr. Santiago.
Members and Mr. Speaker, AB 1016 requires the reporting for community colleges and CSU to track the implementation of the Student Transfer Achievement Act. This bill has received bipartisan support and has no current opposition. I respectfully ask you for your aye vote.
With that, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 70, noes 1. Measure passes. File item 226, AB 1018. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1018 by Assemblymember Cooper and others enact relating to Medi-Cal.
Mr. Cooper, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 1018 requires the Department of Health Care Services and the California Department of Education to convene a joint task force on the topic of mental health services for children. The task force will examine the delivery of mental health services to children eligible for EPSDT services required by the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Act. The establishment of this task force is the first step to assuring that funds are accessed and mental health services are provided to eligible students. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 60, noes 1. Measure passes. File item 227, pass and retain. File item 229, AB 1231. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1231 by Assemblymember Wood, an act relating to Medi-Cal.
Mr. Wood.
Mr. Speaker and members, right now under Medi-Cal, there are no geographic or timely access standards for specialty care transportation. This is especially problematic for people living in my rural district. AB 1231 requires that non-medical transportation be provided to specialty care beneficiaries if those services are more than 60 minutes or 30 miles from the beneficiary's place of residence. AB 1231 received unanimous and bipartisan support in the Health and Appropriations Committee, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Seeing no discussion on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 69, no 0. Measure passes. File item 230, AB 1383. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1383 by Assemblymember Jones and others, an act relating to employment.
Mr. Jones, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise today to present AB 1383 and ask for your aye vote. 1383 will establish a voluntary preference for employers to grant a veteran in hiring. This voluntary preference will expand the veteran's preference exception to all veterans regardless of the era in which they served. Current law only applies to Vietnam-era veterans and only immunizes employers from gender discrimination claims. This is problematic because the amount of Vietnam War-era veterans who are looking to utilize this preference exception is steadily declining due to the fact that many of these veterans are no longer searching for employment. Similar preference laws have recently been enacted in 11 states this year. Similar measures are pending in 17 other states, and I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Breaux, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of 1383. As a veteran and someone who's used the preference on the federal level, I think we should bring this to the state level. It's clear that our veterans are trained, they have leadership capabilities, and they're great employees, so I urge your aye vote.
Mr. Mathis.
Members, I too stand in support of this bill. This is a great bill. Commend the author on bringing it forward. Our veterans across all eras have great skills, and opening this up, as my other members just mentioned, this helps veterans across the board. It brings a very sophisticated, hardworking workforce to us. It helps employers, and it helps us all out because it gets us skilled workers there. I urge your aye vote.
With that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tie the vote. Ayes 72, no 0. Measure passes. File item 231, AB 1426. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1426 by Assemblymember Levine, an act relating to charter schools.
Mr. Levine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1426 ensures that charter schools providing innovative blended learning models can continue to operate as classroom-based schools. Amendments taken in education and appropriations help ensure accountability and make no changes to current law regarding the role or number of credentialed teachers and student-teacher interaction. The bill has received unanimous bipartisan support. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Seeing no discussion on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tie the vote. Ayes 68, no 0. Measure passes. File item 232, pass and retain. File item 233, AB 667. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 667 by Assemblymember Wagner, an act relating to securities.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Saving the best for almost last, I bring you AB 667, which defines and creates a streamlined regulatory requirement for finders. Those are folks who help our small and sized companies find the capital that they need to operate. It's really easy if you're one of the big guys, and the rules in place dealing with the big guys and the securities brokers have worked for years, but the smaller firms find that they're often priced out of the market. What this bill does is provide some support, provide some rules and some clarity so that they'll have easier access to capital. This bill has gotten here with overwhelming bipartisan support, as of course does any Republican bill that gets here, and is very similar to a bill that we had last year that got off this floor virtually unanimously. The Department of Business Oversight has some issues that it raised in the Senate. We are currently working with them and making some substantial progress to remove those issues. This is a bill that helps our small and medium-sized businesses. I urge and I vote.
Mr. Gallagher.
Question of the author.
Without objection.
I just noticed in your bill here that there's a section that says that the finder can have conducted any activity under Section 25212 or Rule 506D of Regulation D under the Securities Act of 1933.
Correct.
Could you just explain to me what those kind of activities are, sir?
Sure. As a former securities lawyer and corporate lawyer, as are you, I will tell you those are the safe harbor provisions that exist in the law currently to allow for the issuance of securities.
Thank you, my good sir. On my own time, you're just truly amazing. Not Mr. The gentleman from Irvine? Okay.
And Mr. Wagner drops the microphone. With that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 69, no 0. Measure passes. Members, I'm prepared to lift the call. I'm prepared to lift a call on file item 171. That's AB 1287. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 With that, we will close the roll and Mr. Chu moves a call. Members, Mr. Chu moves a call. I will lift the call, prepared to lift the call on the item. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 28, noes 33. Mr. Chu is requesting reconsideration. Mr. Chu notices reconsideration on the item. Moving to consent calendar. Does any member wish to remove an item from the consent calendar? Seeing and hearing none, the clerk will read the second-day consent calendar.
Assembly Bill 363 by Assemblymember Steinnorth and others, an act relating to elections.
The clerk will open the roll on the consent calendar. All members vote who desire to vote. Members, this is the consent calendar. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 74, no 0. The consent calendar is adopted. The clerk will read the remaining bills on the second-day consent calendar.
Assembly Bill 427.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Assembly Bill 564.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Assembly Bill 723.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Assembly Bill 1028.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Assembly Bill 1056.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Assembly Bill 1199.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Assembly Bill 1407.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Assembly Bill 1422.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Senate Bill 125 with urgency.
Ayes 74, no zero. On the urgency, ayes 74, no zero on the bill.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 20.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 40.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 43.
Ayes 74, no zero.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 44.
Ayes 74, no zero.
And Senate Concurrent Resolution 52.
Ayes 74, no zero. Members, moving to announcements. Members, if I could have your attention, tomorrow, June 3rd, is the last day to notice intent to remove a bill from the inactive file to be returned to third reading by June 5th. Tomorrow is the last day to notice intent to remove a bill from the inactive file to be returned to third reading by June 5th, and it's also the last day to amend bills on the Assembly floor prior to June 5th. Bills that are amended are subject to a one-day waiting period. The session schedule is as follows. Wednesday, June 3rd, floor session at 10 a.m. Thursday, June 4th, floor session at 10 a.m. Friday, June 5th, floor session at 10 a.m. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Seeing and hearing no further business, I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Holden moves. Mr. Wilkes seconds that this House stands adjourned until Wednesday, June 3rd at 10 a.m. Quorum call is lifted.